For the 6 tasks, we are going to be creating another file, a web Flask directory, and then an HTML file. And here we are going to be creating this part, number odd or even, and it's going to be taking a params which is which should be an integer. And for this one, we are going to be displaying if the n, which is the params, is an is odd or even in the body tag of the HTML. So as usual, I'm going to copy this, go to the web Flask, create it there, copy everything from tax 5, close tax 5, paste it to tax 6, and then I'll open the oh making this should be inside the web Flask. Yeah. So I'm going to go to the template and I'll copy this one and inside the template I'll paste it. And then here I will grab this HTML and I will remove this part and I'll leave it here for now. So we're going to come down here and we are going to, as usual, start with app.route and then I'll push this down. And then we are going to pass in the name of the part, which is number, odd, or even, and then we pass in a specifier which is an int and then followed by the params which is n, and we are not using switch flashes because already up here we set it up globally for all of the routes. And now I'll create the function and I'll call it number, odd, or even, and it's going to take n, which is the params. So right here we are not going to check if n is an integer since this specifier here is already doing it for us by returning 404 error not found to the user. So what we are going to use is we are going to use a ternary operator to determine if n is even or odd. So we are going to create this variable. I'm going to call it even or odd, and I'm going to say even. I'm going to set it to even. That is, if n modulus 2 is equal to 0. If n modulus 2 is equal to 0, then it means the number is even. Else, it means the number is odd. So conditionally, this even or odd variable is going to be either even or odd, depends on what number we get from the params. And then what I'm going to do is we are going to add both this variable and n to a dictionary and then pass it to the template so that we can see how we can display values from a dictionary. So I'm going to say values is equal to, I'm going to call this one number, which is n from params, and I'm going to also call this one even or odd, and the value would be even or odd. So now we are going to return render template, which we already imported at the top here, which we use to display a template page, and then we are going to pass in this HTML file we created here, which is 6 number, odd, or should be even.html, and then you're going to pass this value. So you're going to pass values as values, and now inside this template we are going to use double curly braces to display n. And when it comes to displaying a dictionary type in a template, there are three ways we can do it. We can either say, let's say for n, we can either say values dot get, then we pass in number, which is what we saved it as, or we can say values where we can use the square braces notation and we pass in number. And then the third way is to use the dot notation. When it comes to Ginger template, using dot notation is allowed, and then we pass in number. So, and I think, what is it they said here? Is okay. So we are going to say is. Now we are going to use again the dot notation to even or you use the dot notation again to bring out this value, even or odd. So let's go on and test this. I'm going to come here, copy this, start the app. I'll divide my terminal into two, and you're going to first try 89, which should be odd. And we get 89 is odd. If we should try 80, we get 80 is even. And what other test is there? Okay, 32. So if we try this without passing any params, we get 404 not found. Even if we pass a string, we are still going to get 404 not found. So for the seventh one, we are going to be making updates to our file storage and DB storage, also to the state. So for the file storage, we are going to be adding a method which is close, and this close is going to call reload. The reason for this is, okay, when we get there, we do it. And then add another method to the DB storage, and also it's going to be close, but this one is going to call remove of this attribute self.session. And then in the state, we are going to add a public getter method cities, which is going to return the list of city objects from storage linked to the current state. That is going to be the relationship between state and city for when it's file storage. So I'm going to go to models, engine, now go to file storage, and down here, see we already have, I've already created it, so it doesn't take much time. So we are calling reload here. The reason for this is that if we look at reload, what reload does is the serialization of objects that are already created. That is to say, since we know that when we create an object, it's going to be saved to a file. As when it comes to file storage, it's going to save it to this file.json. So in a case where we should the application shuts down or anything that turns itself and we want to use it again, maybe for modification or for anything. Now, if we call dev.close, what close does is to reload. It takes all the objects that are inside that file and it's going to convert it back to a Python object so that we can be able to use it for our code. So the same thing, similar thing though, is for DB storage. DB storage, where I've already added. So right here where we have sections dot close. So when we are going to be testing this out, I'm going to explain it more. I'm going to explain it because I've not explained it at all. So if we go to state model slash state, so for model slash state, we are going to be adding this data method for cities. So this cities is going to represent a relationship between state and city for when this storage type is not DB. That is when we are using file storage. So this variable storage type, I've created it up here, and it's going to grab the environmental variable HBMB type storage, which is going to say if we are dealing with the DB storage or file storage. So right here under what I'm going to do is to first, because our our goal is to return the IDs or the cities that are associated with a particular state, because we know that a city can only be created from a state. That is, create a city, have to use create it with a state ID. So for file storage, we have to create that relationship. And to do that, I'm going to start with a variable city list. This is going to hold all the IDs of a city that is within a particular state. So I'm going to say for city in models dot storage dot all, and then I'm going to pass in city. So these models dot storage dot all is the model that I'm importing from here. And for each of these city, we are going to check that we are going to compare the ID of each city with the ID of the current instance of this state. So we are going to say if city dot state ID is equal to the current ID of the state, we are going to city we are going to append that city to this city list, which means if state ID of a city matches the ID of the current state, it means the city is under that state, and we are going to append it to the list. And then finally we return the city list. So this is going to be the relationship between state and city for file storage. So by placing this getter method inside this conditional statement, what we do is to say we ensure that it is only used when necessary and would not interfere with SQL Alchemy's relationship management when using the database. So we are going to go ahead and test this out as usual. And for this one, we are going to do it in three ways. We're going to open Python in interactive mode, and we are going to manually add data to the database without using SQL Alchemy, and we are going to test out the close method there. So now to test and understand what storage.close method does, we are going to open the Python in interactive mode after setting this environmental variable, since we want to test the close method for DB storage. So I'll copy this, open my terminal, paste it, and inside here we are going to import storage and state, just like here. I will import storage. Make sure you already have SQL Alchemy installed and MySQL client installed as well. And then I'll import these two. And then we are going to try to retrieve all states and check the length. If I retrieve all states and I check the length, we see that we have one in the state that's inside the database. So to see this clearly, we are going to open another tab and open a MySQL server to view what we have there. So I'm going to say sudo MySQL I'll use the AirBnB dev. I'll enter my own password. Try again. And then I'll enter the password for the AirBnB user. Then I'll switch to the database, which is AirBnB dev db. Yes. And then I'll say select all from states. So we see that we have one item in the table. So the next thing we are going to do is we are going to go open another tab, and we are going to try to add a new state to the database directory to MySQL server without using SQL Alchemy. And I'm going to copy this here, paste it, and then also I'll enter my password. Then password of the user. Let me see. Okay, there's a duplicate for this key. I just have to change something here. Change this to E. I'll copy it again. So we see that we've added another state to the database. So after this, we are going to check if this data has indeed been updated in the SQL server by switching back to this where we open the SQL server, and I'll say select from all states again. So we see that we now have two items in the database. So now we are going to go back to the Python interactive and try to retrieve all states like we did before. So let's see if we can get two. So if I come here and I'll click on this, and we see that we are getting one. That is we are seeing that the one that we created newly is not included here. What's the reason for this? The reason for this is because we did not use SQL Alchemy to add this new state. And because of that, SQL Alchemy is still using the data that it has in this particular section. So for SQL Alchemy to correctly retrieve the data we just added, that's where the storage.close that we just created in the DB storage class comes in. So we are going to call storage.close, and we select it. Now, if we should go ahead and use storage.or and check the length, we see that we are getting 2. The reason for this is because after calling storage.close, what happens is we ended this very section and we've refreshed the section. So the next section is going to be updated with the data in the storage. That is when we just called this storage.or, which means a new section and has updated data from the storage. That's why we are getting up to 2, which is the current count in the database. So that's the use for this storage.close. It ends a section, meaning that the next section that comes after it is going to be updated with whatever that happened between inside this the section before storage.close was called. So this storage.close is very necessary, especially in application where different users will be interacting with the database. We will be using this storage.close to close every operation a user has with the database for every request. That way, the next user will be able to have updated query results or the latest database state when making calls to the database. So the next one is to test the storage.close for file storage. So to test the file storage, after checking all these and added it to these amend.py file. So here, the first one we see that here, let me separate this. We are creating state 1 and we are creating state 2. And right here, we are using state 1 to create city 11, let's say city 11, We are using state 1 to also create city 12, and then we are using the second state to create city 2. And here we are printing out all of them, which means state 1 we have two cities attached to it, and state 2 we have one city attached to it. And if I should go and say Python 3 main.py, what's this? Line 40 state.py, line 40. Okay, this should be the values. So I'll clear and I'll open here. I have to remove this file because it's already been created. So I'll delete it, open the terminal again, and I'll run this. So I'll pull this up. Right here, you can see the new state. This is state 1. You see the ID ends with 8B, and the second state ends with 31. And this is the first city, the second city, the third city. And now we are trying to see if indeed all these cities are related to the state. So we see city here, and if we look for the state ID, we see A8B, and if we check it here, we see that it's the first state. And if we should go ahead and look for the second city and look for the state ID, we see 8AB, and we see that it's also of the first state, which means this first state is actually related to two cities. And the second state, which has 231, if we check the last city that is related to the second state, we check the state each state ID, and we can see 231. So we see that we've rightly achieved this, and we've successfully created a relationship between the state ID and the state and the cities. Although this is supposed to be storage tokens that we're testing, but it's almost impossible to particularly test storage tokens because for file storage we are calling reload, which is just going to deserialize this. It goes to where is the file? It goes into this JSON file because here this is not Python object, this is JSON file. It goes here, it grabs all of this JSON file and it changes it. That's deserializing it back to Python object. That's the reason that we can be able to see it up here. And guys, if you're getting any error that is related to SQL Alchemy, I have a video that is going to show up on the top right of the screen. You can click on it. I talk about all the possible errors that you get via this project on SQL Alchemy and the solutions for them. Also, if you're yet to subscribe to my channel, please subscribe. Thank you.